हाँ, I know.
then we are live.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Well, hello, hello. Hi there, Tom. How's it going?
It's going really well. Excited for this webinar. How are you?
I'm doing good. Same, so am I. And everybody who's joining in, tuning in. Hi, Dean. How's it going? Hi, Taylor. So excited to see you guys interact in the chat. Please keep sending in your questions. And we're shortly gonna start. I see people pouring in, and it's a full house, honestly, here. So, woohoo! All right.
Very exciting. Got a good house. Good people coming through.
Where's everyone joining from? Tom, where are you joining from? You should tell everyone.
I'm down in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm in the States, down in Arizona. We're starting to hit our 90-degree weather. So it's definitely nice for the moment, but it'll be about 120 in the coming weeks. So not looking too forward to that.
Oh, wow. That's wild. Oh, we've got folks from Michigan, from Chicago. Wow, I love this. Oh my God, I'm so excited for this webinar. I can already feel all the energy pumping and going here. Perfect, perfect. I think we can wait about another minute or so and then we can possibly get started. Everybody who's tuning in, always remember our chat is open. So at any point you want to ask anything, you can send it in the chat, raise your hand. I can always make you guys a panelist if you want to have some face-to-face interaction. We're open to anything and everything. All right. Hey, hi Shrija, how's it going? I see you're from Bangalore. Cleveland, amazing. We've got a full house. I think we can officially get started. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first edition of the Olive Branch. This honestly is something that I curated about a month and a half back. And we're going to be hosting a lot of webinars, sending out newsletters, talking about literally anything and everything sales. My name's Jerry, and of course, this is the first one, but not the last. You'll be seeing many more of these in your inboxes. And finally, the topic that we're here at, we're all about active listening today. And we've got none other than Tom in the house. Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then we can get going from there?
Yeah. So I am a founder and CEO of my own company called the S&D Lab, where we're helping organizations either outsource their sales development team or build one internally. Been about 19 months doing that. I'm a four-time sales leader, sales consultant, advisor to a couple brands. Big thing for me is I'm an empathy activist, so always leading with empathy when dealing with our prospects, our buyers, any interaction that we do have. And then, as my headline says, I am your future homie-in-law. Try to
Yeah.
be a friend, try to always be there, help out where I can. I've been in sales since 2007, so a 16-year career, made over 500,000 cold calls and counting. Still in the trenches every day. So that's a little bit of background as to me and kind of what I can bring to the table in our discussion today.
Wow, 16 years. That's been a long journey. And for context, guys, I've known Tom for a few years, for a few months now, and he's hands down one of the most genuine people I've come across. And I know we're talking about active listening, but literally every conversation that I've had with him has been engaging, has been so fruitful. We've always come out with some kind of actionable pointers or, next steps ahead. And I genuinely think that because he truly practices active listening, and I couldn't have asked for a better guest to come over. So, Tom, thanks once again for joining us. And everybody who is joining, a huge, huge shout out to you folks. We're going to run this webinar. Tom's going to take us through all the principles of active listening, all the strategies that he uses. We're going to open it up for some polls, and we're going to save about last 15 minutes for any question answers that you may have. So, Tom, over to you. Do you want me to pull up the deck or do you want to go for it?
Yeah, if you could pull it up for me, if you guys have it. I just have the PDF. So if you guys have the slides, then we'll have you navigate on your side.
Yep. Perfect. Perfect.
Awesome.
There you go.
Perfect. Well, as Cherry said, thanks for all of you guys being here. Obviously, wanting to talk about active listening. It's such a underutilized skill. It's one that we have to develop when we're in the sales motion, because it's just more fruitful for everybody involved. We've all been on those calls. We've all had those interactions where people just aren't really picking up what we're saying, right? And their next question or the next point they make has nothing to do with anything we just said, and it's like, what are we doing? So how can we be more engaging, ask deeper questions, and practice, this active listening skill? So opening slide here, kind of the same stuff we just talked about, right? Is, founder, been in the game for quite some time, so have some experience. And I'm going to walk you through scenarios, stories, just things that have happened over my career and how did I actually get into active listening. Can move the slide there. There we go. So to get us in the right frame of mind and kick this thing off, I wanted you all to take just 2 minutes and recall a sales conversation that you had where you really missed the cue or you did misunderstand what the prospect was really trying to communicate, where you were at with that, what was that situation, and how do you think it affected the outcome? So if you could just take a minute, drop in the chat if anybody's got some scenarios here where recently, you struggled with the active listening part, we'd love to hear from you. That'll just give us a baseline here, as we navigate this conversation and give you guys, some real case scenarios that we could have done differently in. Sherry, do you have one? Do you have one that comes to mind where you were talking with somebody pitching Olive or just in a discussion, and you might have missed the cue that after the call you realized or you misunderstood what they were saying?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, of course, I do a lot of partnership calls for Olive, and when I mean, I did, let's say I was talking to an influencer or a creator, right, trying to pitch Olive and have them support us, become a brand ambassador for us. I spoke in length about what Olive does, and they were telling me what they do and how they can possibly help Olive. But I think there was a time where I missed truly understanding what value they would drive for Olive. And I think I really was trying to show my side of influencer marketing. Hey, this is the idea in my head, and I was trying to fit in their idea with what I had in mind. But that does not necessarily, bode well. And after the call, I was like, oh shit, maybe I should have listened to them a little bit longer. Maybe I should have understood where they were coming from, and maybe we could have, done this better. And I think that those were pretty early days. And of course, I still haven't cracked it completely, but I am getting there.
It's a tough skill. And there's a lot of times after a call, you're like, man, I should have asked that. Or, they really said this. Maybe I should have dove in more there to understand why they kept bringing that up. Or, there's just cues, right? And missing those things.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about why we miss those things, right? What are some of those barriers to practicing active listening? So I'm there with you. I've done it many, many times. When I first started in sales many moons ago, I was the worst at it. I already assumed that they were going to say something. I've heard the same pitch and call over and over that, most of the time I just tune out, right? And then my proposals would be terrible. My follow-up, I wouldn't know what really I was saying. I was checking in, hey, just following up, because I just didn't have anything of substance. So I like what Ishan said, completely misunderstood an objection and handed it incorrectly instead of clarifying. That's a big one. We hear one thing, timeline, budget, something, and because we hear it so often, we take it as surface value. And then that person's like, hey, that's not what I said at all, Cherry. Like, no, I know I mentioned budget, but you're not even hearing what I said. Like, I'm telling you, we don't have budget because of X, Y, Z. And then it just frustrates people, right? So Ishan, great example there. Before we react, just clarify, right? Ask just one more question to make sure, okay, what I'm hearing from you, Cherry, around budget is X, Y, Z, am I on the right page there? Then go into your kind of handling of it. Same with Ishan, in some sense, assume the objection and handle it as a common one instead of understanding, it's a unique situation. And that's a big one. So awesome share, Ishan. If anybody else has got something to add, feel free to drop it in there. Let us know, but good examples here. And we can obviously see when we miss a cue or misunderstand how it can derail a conversation and then derail, next steps for us.
You know what's the
So
funniest thing is not just it's it's realizing the cue later, that is one aspect of things, but even realizing that there was a queue. I think a lot of people
yeah,
tend to forget that entire thing, that hey, oh shit, that was a queue. Maybe I should have looked out for it more often than not.
that's the other thing, is how do you get into the practice of listening for those cues, so that way when they do continue to arise and you do get that practice in there, you are able to pick up on it and you're like, oh, I've heard that one before. Let me go one extra layer there. So it's picking up on the cues too, on that as well.
Yep. I think we've covered what people wanted to ask, or at least tell their situations. We'll probably dive into how
Absolutely.
people can find more cues. Okay.
That's
Yep.
it. So let's talk about, what is active listening first off. You hear it, everybody talks about it, you hear it in passing, but what does it mean? And when you really look at it, it's active listening means you really are listening to the person talking. You're not waiting for your turn to speak. And that was a big problem of mine early days, is I was biting at the bit. I was chomping at the bit to respond. After like 3 words, I was like, oh, I got it. I know where they're going with this. I've heard this a million times. I'm already formulating my response. And then as soon as they were done talking, I was ready to go. And like Ishnan said, like, I'm missing the cues. They're like, dude, did you even hear what I just said? So it's really being present, giving them your full attention, and actively listening to the underline of what they're saying. If they say no budget, what do they mean by that? What are they trying to say? Is that an emotional thing, a psychological thing? Is it generally that they really don't have budget? Because at the same time, you might try to overcome budget and you frustrate the prospect because they're like, you're not hearing me. I don't have budget. I said it
Yeah.
3 times now, but you're so concerned of, I got an objection handle. I got to get to this. That, oh, they're
Yeah.
just knee jerk reaction. And you just have to pick up on that, right? So that's what it really means, is you're not waiting for your turn to speak. You're not even formulating a response yet. You're just practicing and really sitting in on it to hear what they have to say. And it's more than just hearing. Again, what's the beauty about active listening is you're playing detective. It's almost like a behavioral analyst that can really pick up on profiles of people, their behavior, the way they're twitching when they talk, their eyes when they're responding. Are they looking to the left as they say this thing? And all these different nuances that somebody does. How are you being present in your demos and your discoveries, and really picking up on all those little things to where, hey, I don't have budget. We're working on marketing initiatives with the marketing team right now. We're really trying to figure out how to convert our leads from here to here. Oh, interesting. So you don't have budget, but your marketing might. Seems like this might tie
Yeah.
in. Let me take note of that. Where versus you don't even hear the marketing piece and you're just going right back to them on, well, where's your budget? What are you doing? So it's being a detective, hearing the clues and understand what's really being said. And it's important to have, because it builds a bridge. It makes it easier for somebody to, one, cross over understanding. I'll share a quote with you here a little bit later, but one of my favorites is seek to understand and then be understood. We're really trying to understand where they're coming from, what's making them tick, watching during the demo, what perks them up that you said.
Yeah.
Did you catch that? That right when you said that, they really got engaged into the conversation, where before they might have been really flat and kind of dull, but you said that and that just picked their mood up. Interesting. Why? And then you're building trust because they're like, man, this person really is paying attention to me. They're fully focused on me. And I think that I can trust this person because they're not just out here for their own bang for their buck. They're not trying to get their commission, any of that.
Yeah.
McKenna said it right there. It's the 7 habits of highly effective people, right? That's one of them. When you can come into a call to ask great questions, really dive in and seek to understand what they're trying to do, where they've been, and what they've done up until this point, then when you finally enter into your value prop and your pitch of what you do, it's catered to them. It's more specific. More often than not, raise your hand in the chat if you're just running through demos and discoveries and they're on rinse and repeat. Almost every single person you're meeting with every week is getting the same demo and discovery. That's kind of a cue that you might not be really active listening and you're not really catering to the people you're talking to because you're just going through your motions. You're going through the same slides, all of that happens, right? But when you can
Yeah.
come into a call and really ask great questions, then bring in the demo and the discovery and tailor it to what you've heard. So just some background into active listening, the importance of it, what it is, and why it's important to practice it.
Honestly, right
So
now, when you said that when you're just listening to what's I don't have budget, I don't have budget, I don't have budget, and you're still trying to push down your value prop, what you're doing is obviously A, you're not listening to them. B, also you're just destroying that relationship. So even in the future, if they would have any budget, and if there is any bridge that you could, potentially bridge in the future, you're not leaving any scope for that anymore.
that's it, right? You're not. You're just all over the place. It's just different,
Yeah,
Good example
absolutely.
there. So what are really the four components of active listening, right? What are we looking at? It's the 4 A's. So we're looking at attention. Number one is, where is your attention? Are you on Slack, text messaging, scrolling social media, looking all over at shiny objects when you're on these calls? Or are you focused like they're the only person in the room? When you can really be attentive and fully focus on them, that can make all the difference. And we'll talk about like some examples with this and, tools that can help you with this, because I know trying to take notes and you're sitting here doing this and you're all over the place trying to capture this stuff, it's hard to have that attention. But when you go into your demos and discoveries, shut everything off. I go on do not disturb on my phone. I shut down all of my Slack, all of my stuff, and I'm off the grid. All my browsers are closed. And the only thing, like right now for this webinar, the only thing that's open is my slides and you guys, right? Nothing else, because you want to show attention. The second one is acknowledgement. Many times using simple words like, oh, right. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. So what you're saying here, you're just acknowledging them. That shows you're fully locked in, right? With Cherry and I speaking back and forth, I'm giving her those, I'm nodding, I'm acknowledging. It just shows I'm truly present, and really
Yeah.
focused as to, what she's saying. Then you want to look at affirmation. Affirmation is that next one, where echoing back the big points. Interesting, Cherry, you mentioned just a few minutes ago, budget, and, how you would typically handle that. Is that what you're saying is, you would prefer to handle it this way when you're typically talking about budget? Yep, that's right on, Tom. That's exactly where I'm at. That way you just stay in convo with them. You're showing them, okay, I'm understanding. Okay, I get it. I'm clarifying. Okay, so when you say timeline and you're out 6 months, what does that really mean for you? What are you going to be tackling in the next 6 months? Oh, this, that. It just shows that you're not just hearing, but you're really getting it. You're actually connecting the dots and bridging that trust with them. And then the last one is action. Action is connecting with how they're feeling. A quick, that makes total sense. Totally get where you're coming from on there. Cherry, I'm in agreement. You're maybe bringing in a story. A client of mine had that same concern. They looked at it this way when we should have been looking at it this way. All of that just shows that you're connecting, you're affirming, you're repeating back key points, and your attention is fully focused. When you can practice these 4 A's and every call you step into, you have a chance to build a relationship. You have a chance for a very deep conversation that when you walk away from it and you get all your notes, when your boss asks you, hey, where are we at with that call? How did it go? You have a wealth of knowledge, and it's not surface level stuff. You're not saying, oh, well, timeline looks like in 6 weeks, budget looks like they're probably looking at 35 to 5K. This is the champion, but I don't know who the influencer is or who the decision maker is. It's very surface level responses. To your sales manager, it's like, did you even talk to them? Like, what? Okay,
Exactly.
why
Yeah.
a 6-week timeline? Right, because as soon as your manager asks a follow-up question, you fall apart. They're like, okay, why did they say 6 weeks? What are they going to be working on? Oh, I don't know. I didn't ask. They just told me 6 weeks, and I figured, okay, we're down for right now, right? Well, what
Yeah.
does that mean, right? Where instead I could be like, oh, They said 6 weeks because actually right now they just onboarded a new software. They actually hired 2 reps where they're working some onboarding. And just right now, us trying to integrate this tool would just derail that. So they said by like April, like May 15th or so, they should be ready to go, but told me I could follow up sooner. Oh, cool. Now you're like giving intel, right? You're actually diving in and you can
Exactly.
tell the whole story. And that's the importance. So with these 4 steps, just like Suraj said in here, it's summarizing what you heard back. You're connecting stories. So from what I'm hearing, Cherry, when you talk about budget, that's a big one for you in a lot of your
Yeah.
partnership calls, talking about things. You're experiencing XYZ, right? Is that what you're kind of running into? Now,
Yes.
also, you can clarify back to me and say, no, Tom, that's not what I said, actually. What I'm trying to say is with budget, when I get into it, I don't know how to word it where it's not too direct, or, I can ask it in a lighter way. That's what I mean by when I try to overcome the objection. Not that I know that they don't have the right. So now you're like, okay, cool. Now let me show you how I can help you there. Whereas if you don't do that, I'm going to unload and word vomit 5 tips for you on how to overcome budget. And you're like,
Of
that's not
course.
what I
Yeah.
said. Like,
Yeah.
thanks for taking me on a 10-minute rant, Tom, but that wasn't where I was going with that.
No,
So,
absolutely.
so that's why it's so important to practice. That's the 4 things that I would say as you guys are out there in your calls, you're talking with even a sales leader in here right now that might be doing one-on-ones with your team. This is a great skill to have. If they say your team member says they're going on vacation or they're stressed out about something at home, don't blow past that, right? That just shows that like you just don't care. That's what it really active listening showcases. When you're not practicing it, it just shows you don't care. You're going through the motions, you're really annoyed, you don't really care what's going on in this person's day to day, but you're more concerned about what they can do for you, right? Okay, I need this from you. Okay, I'll get you the proposal. Let's get this closed up. You're just ingenuine and disconnected with people. And especially as a sales leader, even in one-on-ones, really listen to your peers and what your team is telling you. If they're saying there's data issues, okay, what about data issues are you saying? What I'm understanding is, the mobile numbers aren't connecting. No, no, no. The mobile numbers are great, but I'm getting bounces on my emails. Ah, okay, totally understand that. Where is the data, right? And now you're just getting deeper into that conversation. And now your team walks away being like, man, Terry really, really listens to us and really
Yeah.
gets a pulse on where we're at. And then you can come with really cool solutions. Week later, you're like, hey, Cherry, I remember we talked about data. Here's 2 things I wanted to showcase to you. I kind of dove into these to see if we could make some progress. What do you think of this? And it's like, man, you really listened. You really
Yeah.
understood me, and now you're willing to help. Those are the things that make, a huge difference.
Honestly, everything you said just like hits bang on the mark, because as much as I try practicing active listening, I'm good with the acknowledgement, the affirmation, the action, but the attention aspect. It sounds like the
Yeah.
most simple thing that, hey, just shut down everything and just focus on the person, listen to what they're speaking. But I just cannot get to it. I've been trying so hard, but I know there are 30 things running in my mind that, oh, I have to follow up this, I have to speak to this influencer, I have to close this deal, I have to update my manager. And it sometimes get it so hard to like actually give them like 100% of your attention. How do you do that, Tom? How do you think I should tackle that?
I think, and most of you, please, drop in which A you tend to struggle with here. We'll have a poll here in a bit, but attention is probably the biggest one. Everybody can
Yes.
nod, everybody can acknowledge, they can affirm, but the reality is it all starts at number 1. And that's why attention is
Yeah.
the first one, right? Is because it's hard. You're thinking about your grocery list that you got to do at the end of the day, your
I
home life,
swear.
your kids you got to get to. Like, it's a lot of thoughts that are always running, right? And you're already pre-planning your next questions. And I did that, right? Like I said, my attention was the worst. I was messaging people while I was on the demo. I was just going into my script of the next question. No matter what they said, I was taught on a script, so I just go to the next question. Where you just be distracted, you just be forgetful. Then you'd hang up the call and you're like, why did I ask that? Shoot, I didn't get to that.
Yeah.
And so with that, with attention, the best things I can tell you guys to try to do, and that I started doing once I kind of realized I was just missing the mark here, it's definitely turning everything off. That's the big one for me. Change the game for me. Every demo and discovery call that I go into, or any meeting with my team that I walk into, I shut everything off because nothing is going to change in that 30 minutes to an hour. That can't wait. And I think that's another thing is we all live in this very fast pace, get to the next thing, keep moving, get back to that person immediately if they Slack me right now. And that was me all the time. I'd get right back to
Yeah.
an email. I'd hit the Slack right away, regardless if I was on a call or not. And once I
Right.
realized to be fully present, really focused, make eye contact with the person, make sure I'm really locked in, staring and looking, because that's a big indicator too, and will really keep you locked in. Shut off the Slack, close down the email box, get rid of everything, just really be there. And honestly, another thing that really changed for me was wanting to learn from these conversations. And I think that's what really changed the gears for me is I wanted to learn. I wanted to really be present because whether this call goes forward, there's a proposal, whatever it may be, this is gold for me. I have somebody on a call that at least wants to hear what we have, where we're going, and I just want to learn from that. And so even if they're not really engaging with me or I can't really get them to speak, I'm trying to ask some questions to understand what is going to perk their attention, what is something that
Yeah.
is on their radar, because those insights I could bring back to my team, I could bring back to the org and say, hey, these are some things that these people are saying. And so that's really what it was, is picking up on that, shutting down things. And then we'll talk about this and plug to Olive, but once I got note takers, the game's changed. I started in 2007. There was no such thing as this stuff. I had to be full notepads, just jotting down everything, manually putting in notes. And so a lot of that would distract me, where now I have note takers. I use Olive.ai. And now in my demos and discoveries, I can just sit and be present. So if you have a hard time with active listening and really diving in and being present in your calls, get a tool to help you to remove that distraction and the note taking side of things and missing out things. Because now that I have Olive, I just get to sit in my calls. I use the trigger words, budget, timeline, and the AI is picking that all up for me and then giving me a really cool brief at the end that shows me, okay, ooh, I missed this question. This one didn't get picked up. Now, next call, I need to make sure I ask that. Or, ooh, cool, we talked budget. Here's what they gave me back. And I can just be present and just talk and listen. And all my notes will get, squared away on the back end. And the deeper I go into that conversation on that topic, the more notes the AI will be able to enrich and give to me. So that's kind of
Yeah.
how I've been practicing it now, is shut all the tools off, just be present in that one call, and then try to get a note taker for you that could be on top of the call and remove the note taking aspect and sync that back to your CRM. Because as much as it is to write and take the notes, that's a distraction, to be dead honest with you. It's still a
Yeah.
distraction because it takes you away from the breaking the eye contact and the convo. You're writing it down. You're scribbling because you're trying to keep up, right? So at the end, you look at your
Yeah.
notes and you don't even know what half of it says. You're like, wait, where is the one part? Like, what did they say here? Wait, you're all over. So those are some things that I would
100%. Yeah.
recommend doing to practice your attention aspect.
Yep. Okay, moving on to our barriers. I know we've covered most of them, but really, I mean, preoccupation. Let's dive into that.
Yeah, this is it. This is where most of you are going to resonate. We'll have a poll coming up here in a minute, but let's talk about what is stopping you from effective listening. Preoccupation. I can't say the word. That one is the first one. That's when your mind's racing about the next call or the one after, or you're occupied with, like we said, your grocery list at the end of the day. You got to get your kids in 30 minutes. You're just all over the place worrying about stuff that unfortunately isn't going to make or break anything in the very present moment that you're in. You're on a call. There's nothing you can do about that stuff. Shut it off, right? Practice, just tune that stuff out. And that tends to be a big barrier because you're worried about the next call or the one after, and you're just not fully present in, hey, I have somebody in front of me. A lot of times this happens in cold calling. everybody's so in emotion to rip through their dials that as soon as they get somebody to connect, they're in and out of that call in few minutes because they're worried about getting to the next one. Yet they're going to sit in voicemails and gatekeepers for the next 30 minutes before you get the other one. So why are you not being fully present with the person who just answered the phone in front of you that you can have a conversation with? You're more concerned about, oh, I got to get my dials up, I got to get more.
Yeah.
And why not take the 15, 20 minutes to enjoy that one person that is on the phone with you, ask some deeper questions, kind of learn from them. But instead, we're like, boom, boom, 2, 3 questions. Oh, you're disqualified. Oh, there's something here. Great. Now on to the next one. And you're just going to go sit in the abyss, waiting for your next connect. Then now you're just preoccupied, right? You're worried about everything else. Another one is just distractions in general. We talked about this, the buzzes, the beeps, everything that's going on around you. We live in a very short attention span place nowadays because of social media and all the different alerts that we get. Our phones are popping off every 5 minutes. We're connected to Slack, our CRM notifications, our email, our friends, our mom, our kids. Like there's just so much going on that it pulls us away from what's really important, which is the conversation, right? So distractions is a big one. Hard to get. You're looking at tuning out, hard to get, right? Sometimes when the buyer's talking, this one's a big one where you'll start losing your active listening is that maybe you get a technical buyer on the phone. If they start going into tech specs and industry lingo and just really getting deep with you, I found a lot of reps will tune out. They'll shut off right then and there because it's really hard to process. They're not really listening and they're just like overwhelmed by the jargon that this person is just unloading on them for the next 5 minutes on.
It might be too difficult to follow.
Yeah, we use Ruby and we've got this MQL system and we've got this, and you're like, tuning out when learn from that. If that is foreign language to you, learn from it and maybe ask a follow-up question, even if you know the answer. Hey, you mentioned Ruby, like talk to me about that. I'm very curious about Ruby. It comes up often in my calls. I'm obviously not too familiar. I know we connect with it, but like, what's the importance behind Ruby? And if you were to, become a customer, oh, well, this is why. And just embrace it versus getting annoyed or tuning it out just because you lack the understanding of it. And if you find the jargon to be tough, if you're active listening, that's a cue to you. Hey, maybe I should go learn this stuff more. I have a client right now in cryptocurrency. We're talking about stacking and hedge funds. And sometimes when the call with the prospect, they'll get into stacking and all this investor stuff. I've learned from active listening, hey, I actually don't know that stuff enough. Maybe I need to go read more up on that. So now I'm studying stacking and understanding it. So that way my follow-up questions can be a lot tighter. And it's like, oh, you mentioned stacking. Let me, I've read into that. Are you doing this or that? Now we're building trust and credibility. So sometimes the distraction is you lose the jargon. Take that cue as, hey, that's something maybe I should work on and learn those terms a little bit better. Tuning out, we talked about sometimes we think we've heard it all. We hear no budget or, oh, timeline, give it 6 months. You tune out immediately. You're like, oh, here we go again with this objection of 6 months. Like, I'm not even going to engage in this. There's nothing I can do here. I'm just going to hang up and move on. And so we'll check out, even if we don't mean to, because it's just natural behavior. So tuning out is another barrier. And then last one, is we're just going to check together. I have a poll for you. I want to know out of these 4 preoccupied, distractions, hard to get lingo with the ICP you're going after, or the tuning out just because you've been in the game for a little bit, you're starting to see a lot of the same stuff. What do you tend to find in your own world as to, which one of these is most relatable to you when you are trying to active listen? Which one hits you? And I think we have the poll right here. So I'll launch that for you. Should come up on the screen for all of you. Now that we've broken these down as to which ones they each are, what is it? Do you feel you're more preoccupied? You're dealing with external distractions, difficulty in understanding the needs or emotions of the buyer, or lack of interest in the conversation? And then other, if anything comes up. What would you say for you, Cherry, if you had to pick one? What's the big one for you?
Oh, it's got to be external distractions without a second's doubt. Right now, also when I was talking to you, my phone went off, and I was like, no way, I cannot look at that. I am literally listening about that,
Live in the
listening
call.
here.
Oh,
I was like, I am not
distractions are a big
replying
one.
to that Slack DM. I am not replying to any emails right
I
now. Just no.
Yep. That's why I fell in love. What changed the game for me, even late, I'm 16 years in, I started building my own company now. As of about a year ago, I really dove into the do not disturb feature on my phone. I have
Yeah.
Apple. And I never understood it. I really didn't like it because I didn't want to miss stuff. I didn't want to be that person. But about a year ago, I actually started doing do not disturb, and it's changed my life. I'm not so in it every 5 minutes now. I used to,
Right.
like I said, I used to be that person, get right back to that text message, call that person right back, do everything.
Yeah.
Now I'm on do not disturb. I have peace. I get to it when I want to get to it, not because I think I have to. And that's just a
Yeah.
big difference. When you're out there in the trenches, like that stuff can wait, right? I've got stuff to do.
And honestly, like from
All
an
right. So
sorry,
go
I was
ahead.
just saying from an external distractions place, one thing that did help me very recently is set up like a completely entire different room for my workspace so that I really don't
Mm-hmm.
have to get distracted with more of my personal surroundings and my cat and whatnot. Like I just, just basically that.
That's it. Shut it all down. If you are on a work floor with your team and you go into a demo and discovery, the best thing you can do is go into a room, close the door, shut down. Don't try to do it, right in front of everybody. A lot of my reps used to do that. They'd get into a cold call block, and it was just distracting being around the team. They wouldn't really focus. They were getting in flyby conversations after every call. Terry, let me tell you about this call. You're not, and 10 minutes go by. Most of my team would start going into rooms during their call blocks, and they would be like, look, I got to go, Tom. I'm going to go for 2 hours. If you need me, slack me, but I'm going to be in the room down the hall. And they would just go all out for 2 hours. They would book
Yeah.
more meetings during that than when they were on the floor with the rest of the folks, because those distractions were gone. They could just do their job at hand. So recommendation for some of you, if that becomes an issue too, go shut off, go put yourself in a room, close the door, and just be present in what you got going on. I'm actually surprised at this. It actually says that they're preoccupied with the response or the sales pitch, more so than external distractions. So it's just preoccupied. You're worried about your response. You're already thinking about what you're going to do next or what the next step in your sales pitch is, right? They're already looking at the next slide, trying to look at how they're going to
Yeah.
present that. And they're not even done with the current one they're on, right? I used to do that. I used to do that in pitches and stuff. I'd have the deck over in another space, look at the next one, kind of pre-pet. Now I just let it ride, let it happen naturally. Pausing is really good. It shows that that's the other thing, is introduce the pause. Like if you get a conversation, me and Sherry are talking, she tells me budget, timeline, whatever that may be. And if I already have a response immediately, she doesn't trust me, right? People pick up on that cue and they're like, how did you already have a response when I just gave you my answer and I literally just finished my sentence and you're already like, oh yeah, so with budget, we help companies formulate how to get a budget in and we can help you hit. You didn't even listen. Where
Yeah.
instead, if I actually listen to Cherry and she's talking through this, there's going to be about a 30 to 60-second delay because now I'm formulating my response. Interesting, Cherry. Totally hear where you're coming from when you talk about the budget restraints you have. You mentioned that you're in a freeze. Budget's pretty tight because you guys just rolled out that tool. What else, what other departments do you think would find value in this? Do you know if marketing would like it? Right now, it's like I paused for a minute, I formulate my response, and now I come in. That little micro moment builds trust because you at least paused for a minute and it looks like you were trying to collect your thoughts versus as soon as you finish your sentence, I'm like, boom, gotcha. Already knew what I was
Exactly.
going to
Yeah.
say. So preoccupied, don't always think that's a good thing. Don't always think having a response fully ready to go is a good thing because it's not. Just shows that you're going through your emotions. Even if you do know the answer, at least put a 30 to 45-second pause in it. Make it look like you had to formulate it right and took a few minutes and then come out with it and say, okay, here's what I would suggest based on what you just told me, Cherry. Here's what I'm thinking might be a play for us. that's the way to go. So love that you guys went with the preoccupied. Very common. We've all done it. I was that way. I already knew where my script was going. So I figured that would be a good one for people. Now we'll move into how to implement. So let me share the results so everybody can see that. So yeah, most everybody said preoccupied. So thanks you guys for contributing there. Now what we're going to talk about is how to implement and how to really dive into active listening. We're kind of hitting on this throughout it, but the 4 things that I want to leave you guys with to practice this is empathetic listening. Number 1, really dive in and, really focus on nodding your head, your eye contact, you're showing empathy in the way that you're listening. Empathy just goes such a long way to show them like, hey, based on what you just said, Sherry, we actually did have another client who talked about, probably waiting 6 to 8 weeks. They had rolled out their tool. Let me show you how we helped them because they didn't have 8 weeks to waste, unfortunately, even though they had these roadblocks. Here's what our team does to help. Now this person feels relieved and they're like, this person's really listening to me. It's just like in a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife relationship, partner relationship. People just want to know they're being heard. If you can validate that and show people they're being heard, it goes a long way in your sales process and in your relationships. Another one is paraphrasing. Some of you have said that in the comments here and, summarizing back what you hear to them. This is a big one just to make sure you're on the same page. Just paraphrase it, bring in their own words, right? Use their words against them. Well, not against them, but, giving that confidence of, hey, Cherry, you said a few minutes ago, you talked about budget. You brought it up a few times now. From what I'm understanding, you're saying that within the budget, it's not that the 5K is not the right value. It's where do I come up with the 5K? Is that right? Or are you saying the 5K is too expensive in general, whether you had the money or not? Can you just clarify that for me? I just want to figure out where we're at. No, Tom, the value is there. 5K seems right on par with the competitors we've been talking to. But what we're trying to figure out is where do we get that budget from? We're really tight and financially kind of being reserved right now. I just don't know if we could pull that off and see the ROI coming from that. Got it. So now we're talking about ROI. Well, let me talk about that a little bit. What's your average contract value? How many demos does it take to get to, a deal? Okay, so we need to pull this lever, this lever. Okay, so we need maybe 12 people a month talking to you. 6 would come, right? Now you're having a more deep conversation because you've actually listened. Open-ended questions, another good one. The more you can get the prospect speaking, the more they spill. An FBI analyst will tell you this. Anybody will tell you this. You want somebody to spill the beans, ask them open-ended questions and get them talking about themselves, their process, where they're at. And if you're actively listening, like a detective, you pick up on the cues. You're like, interesting. You just said you were scaling the team out, but you don't have the money to do this, but you are able to pay this much. Just curious where that come from or how you got there. Now the person's like, well, shoot, I got cornered. I didn't mean to spill that. Or, you dive into it's a lot, right? When you can ask open-ended questions, and a lot of reps ask close-ended questions. What I would recommend for a lot of you is write down 10 to 15 open-ended questions and go through that practice that can help you in your calls. So that way they do have to answer. If you start running into walls in your demos and discoveries, every answer is a yes or no. Well, how do you expect to get anything? Hey, Tom, do you have budget? No. Hey, Tom, what's your, is 6 weeks too much of a timeline for you? No. Well, now I'm just getting into roadblocks and I can't get anywhere and I'm not picking up on anything, where instead ask these open-ended questions. And what I like to do is lead them. They're called leading questions. So I'll do like a multiple choice. Hey, Cherry, when I talk to sales leaders about their team using cold calling in their sales process, one of 3 things tends to be the roadblock. It's either the opening of the call and getting people to speak for longer than 15 seconds. It's the middle on having the dialogue and ask really good questions, or it's the close and knowing when to ask for the meeting and get to that next step. Out of curiosity, which one of those is, a big problem for you and the team? They have to answer me. with a long-winded answer. But I don't care if they say the middle, beginning, or end, because that's all going to help me in the long run. If they say opener, great. Now we're going to dive into that. If they say middle, now I can dive into that. I made them feel like they're choosing their own path, but I'm still going the direction I want them to go. So if you know budget comes up with your prospects a lot and your price point seems to be a struggle, ask them, hey, when meeting with other competitors, what's some of the price ranges that you're seeing? Then they have to answer. They're like, well, I've seen like 5, 10, 20K. And which one seems up to par with what you guys have already kind of looked at and what you could allocate to this? We're looking at like 3 to 4K actually, and these people are coming way high, and we don't even need half the stuff they're offering. Okay,
Right, yeah.
What is priority for the tool? Now we're just getting deeper and deeper because we're asking these questions, and the more they spill, the deeper you can look for that cue to go in for your kill and be like, you know what, Sherry, love what you just mentioned there. That's exactly why I was calling you or why we're on this call. Let me show you how we can solve that. And then you're right into what really matters for them. And then avoid interrupting. Do not interrupt, you guys. The worst thing you could do on a call is jump in too early, way too soon. Breathe, pause, just digest it. It's okay to not have a response right away or interrupt them, because if what does assuming do and interrupting do? It just makes an ass out of you and me, right? Don't do that. Let them finish their train of thought, get it all out, because before they finish, they might have said one key thing that just really bit you in the ass because you didn't listen, right? So figuring out, don't interrupt. The big thing that changed for me is I put myself on mute. I did. I love the mute button. Even in my cold calls, I would just get in there. Oh, I'd hear them and I'd be like, oh yeah. And they'd be like, dude, shut up. Listen to me. So what I have to do, hit the mute button. That way I could still get it out of my system, but I was hearing them, right? And they didn't feel interrupted. In my calls, they were like, I'd get to the point where they'd be like, hey, are you there? And I'd have to come off mute. Yeah, I'm here. I was just really listening to what you were sharing. I really appreciate it. But I was just really just being present here and wanted to hear what you had to say, right? So the mute button worked for me, to just don't interrupt. Let them finish their thought, regardless if you've heard it thousands of times. For this person, this is the first interaction with you. That's the other thing you have to realize is, yes, you've done this 20 times this week. Yes, you've been in 3 demos prior to this person today in your demo and discovery. But for them, this is their first interaction with you. Do not bring in your baggage from the other calls. Do not bring in your assumptions. Treat this as this is the very first time you've ever heard this objection, this concern, and really process it. And don't interrupt them. Let them finish out the thought.
Absolutely.
I like what sir. Go ahead. You're good.
See, I'm not trying to interrupt you.
You're not listening, Cherry. That's funny.
No. I was just saying is with the open-ended questions, I think that really helps establish relationships. That you actually get to go in for the kill and you actually build that connect. And nothing does it better than open-ended questions, in my opinion.
Well, it shows you've actively listened when you can really get a good follow-up question. If they say budget or, they're not the decision maker, understand what their role then is. Listen to that. So the next open-ended question is not like, oh, would John be the buyer? That's a yes or no. Okay, interesting. And most recently when I've been talking with folks, I've been going through the CMO. So I'm intrigued as to why you're telling me it would be the CEO. I haven't seen that in an organization before. Walk me through, when you've brought in a tool before, what's that buying process been through? Does it go through you? How does that work? Now for the next 10 minutes, they're going to tell you their whole buying process, and you've got that all lined up. So now you can multi-thread, you can get ahead of it so you don't potentially lose that deal because you're pursuing the wrong person, right? They'll tell you, well, typically I do the process. Yes, I sit here, I take the call. I then formulate an email that goes over to John, giving him my bullet points, what I thought was good from the call. John will then potentially step in and demo 2 or demo 3. Now you're just gathering intel and you're like, okay, so they're going to send a recap email. So now at the end of the call, when you go to close, they're like, hey, Cherry, you mentioned earlier in your buying process, you will send an email over to John kind of highlighting your bullet points. What do you think's resonated with you the most, and what would you relate to him after our conversation today? And is there anything I can provide to help you in those 3 bullet points? Now they're like, damn, you listened. I see you picked up on that. Okay. Or they said they were going on vacation for 2 weeks and it'll be a little bit of a slow buying process. At the end of the call, hey, by the way, Cherry, you did mention you were traveling. Just real curious, where are you going? I'm actually going to Vegas in a couple weeks myself. Oh,
Yeah.
you heard that? Yeah, it's my honeymoon or it's my anniversary or my kid's birthday. Now you can send a gift after the demo and say, hey, so, or write that down on your calendar and send them something the day of and say, hey, Cherry, I remember you mentioned today was honeymoon day. You're taking off with the fiance. Congrats on the wedding. Here's a little housewarming, a gift from me I saw on your registry. Look forward to talking to you when you get back. That's what active listening does, is it just builds trust, credibility, lets these people feel like they're the only thing in your world right now. They're the only one that matters. You don't have 15 other deals that you're working at the same time. They are your priority, and you're just really paying attention to them and understanding how you can serve them, right, and help them.
Absolutely.
Um,
We were done
Go
with
ahead.
this poll, and yeah,
We're moving through it. It's good. We're kind of all over, but it's working. Again, we kind of talked about implementing. We'll wrap up here, but in this, just make sure when you are going into your calls, you're not in your head. That's a good one. Really easy to do. Hey, yeah, me and Cherry have been doing it the whole call. We're like, we're nodding along, right? And we're
yep,
like, oh, that was really great what she said, and that's good what he said. When you're on camera and you're in those demos and discoveries, you got to look like you're present. And nodding your head goes a long way. Eye contact. Don't be scared. Look at it. Make eye contact with them. Don't worry about what's on the screen. Be present with them, because when you can look, you start looking at their cues and their body language. And when you can become a seller that taps into body language when you're on calls, game changer, because you could really pick up on how like people are moving and what they're doing. So it's a big difference maker. Taking notes. I know I say jotting down what they say. This is a good one if you can't get a note taker, because sometimes when you do jot down, I think there's a study about it, right? For certain behaviors, writing it down helps it stick versus just listening. If I at least write it 3 times, that it sticks with me, right?
yeah.
If somebody tells me their name, I got to repeat it 3 times just so it sticks, right? It's little things like that. But get a note taker, let it jot it down for you. It will help your attentiveness really be focused on that person. Reflecting back, we talked about this. A lot of you said this in the comments. Repeat those key pain points to them. Repeat what you know, and in their own words. Sherry, you told me earlier in this webinar, distractions was a big piece for you. You said when you get that cell phone, right? It was a cell phone that you said, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's when my phone goes off. Cool. I recommend do not disturb, right? Now you're just repeating back because they can't argue their own words, and it shows you
Yeah.
listened versus you
Yeah.
saying, hey, your own words of it. Asking questions, when you're active listening, your questions get more specific. They get richer. They're more open-ended. They're more targeted than just like, hey, what's budget look like for you? That's dumb. Don't ask that. Hey, in the conversation here, we talked about, you've looked at 3 other competitors. You mentioned they're between 5 to 10K, and that you would feel more confident about around 4K. Is that right? Let me see how I can make this proposal work for you. Okay, we might have to do without this, right? Now you're deeper. And then your body language. Open body language when you're on the calls. Be excited. I stand up. I got a stand-up desk. It's the only way I can perform when I'm on my demo and discoveries or my calls. If I'm sitting, I'm flat, I'm dull, I'm not attentive. When I stand, I'm fully locked in. So just know your body language is a big piece of what we do, especially in a cold call. It's the only arsenal you got is your tone and your body language, and they can sense that through the phone. And then in demo discovery, if you're over here messing around, you're looking off to the side, all that body language tells them, hey, you're not listening, and you're not paying attention.
I think that's the
And
quote you were
going
talking
back
about.
to it, and going back to it all, the most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. We all want it. We all want to be heard. We all want to be appreciated. We all want people to actually understand what we're trying to say. So remember, when you go into your calls, first seek to understand and then be understood. When you can seek to understand and really dive in as to, like I said, where they're coming from, what have they done up until this point? Again, don't assume. Don't go right into your demo and start pitching stuff And maybe they've already seen, you hear about it on LinkedIn all the time. How many people walk into a demo and they're like, dude doesn't even know that I've seen 5 tools or that I'm aware of their tool or that I was a past user at another company. They have no idea. And they're taking me through this boring demo that like, I know all this stuff. First,
Yeah.
seek to understand. Hey, Cherry, what do you know about the note taker space? Have you ever used one before? No, I haven't. Or, oh yeah, I used 3 or 4 before. Oh, okay. So you tried them before. What didn't work with them? Because you went through 3 or 4 now. Then once you get all of that, cool, Cherry. Let me talk to you about what makes our note taker different. Why Olive is where people are going. Based on what you said for number 1, this, number 2, this is how we're tackling it. Would love to show you how this works, right? Now it's tailored and they feel understood. And now you're targeting the things that actually make sense for them because you seek to understood where they're at, where they're going, and where they're coming from.
Tom,
So that's the quote. Take it. Go ahead.
honestly, I get where those 16 years of sales have gone because I have felt so heard in this webinar. You've like, even if I've just mentioned small, tiny little details, you have picked on them, and that's just fantastic.
It's powerful stuff, and it took time to get there. Like I said, I was the worst of the worst back in the day until I started practicing and being aware. And this quote right here is just seek to understand first. I made an ass out of you and me a lot of times. I was assuming I would come into calls already plan of attack, already knew how I was going to close this deal, and that stuff would derail within seconds because I just wasn't paying attention. I was distracted. It just doesn't work. But when you pay attention, people feel heard, they feel trusted, and it's a big piece. So as we wrap up, I got one more poll for you all. I'm hoping the results are where we're looking for. How do you now feel about implementing active listening now? After coming by here for 40, 45 minutes, we dove into a lot of this. What do you feel now as, hey, very confident. I practice it. I do it. I've seen the results from it. Somewhat confident. I understand it, but I'm still trying to apply it. Not confident. I still find it very challenging to focus and get engaged in the conversation. And really, I'm just unsure, really, Tom, what active listening could do for me and my sales outcomes. It doesn't make sense to me. What are y'all thinking? How do you feel, Cherry? I know we talked a little bit about some of this in the beginning, the distractions, different things. Where do you feel now after going through this material? How are you feeling?
I mean, I feel pretty confident that I know what levers I should, utilize. Currently, I think I'm somewhat confident. I think once I do actually practice everything that I've learned, I think I'll get there. But it's going to take so much effort. I already know it.
It's just awareness. Once you can understand that, hey, this is something I should be working on, go listen to your calls, go re-watch your demos and discoveries, because you'll start picking up where you completely missed the mark. I've done that. I've been embarrassed listening back on my demo and discovery because I'm like, dude, they straight told me this and I just ignored it or did not hear them one bit. And I went way over here in left field. What was I doing in that moment? Was I like not paying attention? So the more you practice and just be cautious, the better, right? As we wrap up, some Q&A. I know we just got about 120 seconds, 2 minutes or so. Siraj, you said any tips for using active listening to get through to a tough customer? Tough customers just want to be heard. They've been through so many demos or conversations and they've yet to be heard that every time a salesperson calls, they're just already shut out because nobody wants to listen to them. I used to work at Yelp, and if you guys know what Yelp is, every customer was a tough customer. The moment you picked up the phone or got into a call and started talking about Yelp, they wanted to talk about the negative reviews. Oh, how bad Yelp is. You have to seek to understand where that's coming from. Why is that? Up until this point, what's been causing that? Hey, John, I hear you. Yelp's got a bad taste for a lot of people. What led that to? What led you there? Why is the taste so nasty with Yelp? Just talk to me. I would love to understand. Then they unload, and now we can get to the root of that, right? So accept that and embrace it and just talk to them. Hey, Cherry, why is it that you're shut off to the idea about bringing in AI into your system? You're kind of getting touchy with that. Have you had a bad experience with AI before? Walk me through that. Now they feel heard and they can get that off their chest. So that's what I say is lean into it, dive deeper into their frustration or their toughness on why they're kind of shutting down, call it out. I've done that. Cherry, sounds like you're just really having a hard time talking to me. Where does that come from? I know you probably dealt with sales calls. What gives you that frustration? Well, they never listen to me. Da da da. Right now, you can go from there.
Right.
For Sergey, how do I show I'm listening when we're just talking tech specs? That's another good one. If they bring up the tech specs and they're like, hey, does your tool do X, Y, Z, and does it integrate into HubSpot and this tool? It does. Walk me through why that's of importance to you, Cherry. Why would it need to be into those tools? Is that something you guys use periodically? Yes, it does. Now go into it. So again, it's just asking follow-up questions to it. If you're just talking tech specs, they're asking about those tech specs for a reason. Find out why they're important. They're asking for purpose. So what is it about those? Somebody asks you about color scheme. Hey, can I white label this and change the colors? Why is color important? Would that make or break the deal for you? No. I just love coloring. I just love, making it look branded. Okay, why is that important to you? Right now you're getting into it. So yeah, hopefully there was a few good questions there. DM me on LinkedIn if there's some more here. I'll try to capture these. I'll try to work with Cherry on getting some of these answered on the back end for you guys. How to leverage technology to improve your active listening. I hate to plug them in the webinar, but Olive.ai has been doing it for me. A note taker is big because it just captures that stuff and allows you to just be present. If you're not using one, highly recommend getting one. Recording your calls, making sure you have a call recorder up, set up your Zoom to local record, make sure you're reviewing those. Tech can help you practice active listening because you can review the game tape. And from there, you'll start picking up and seeing where you're missing the mark. And with the note takers, it'll take care of all that for you as long as you're using your words and asking great questions. Olive's helped me write really good proposals lately where people are like, yo, this proposal was spot on. And it's because of the data that I'm capturing in the call and Olive taking care of it for me and just pushing it back to my CRM.
Absolutely. I think we've answered a lot of questions and we still have so many more coming in. But Tom, you're right, we're nearing the end of this webinar. So everybody, I'll work with Tom when we're sending out the demo, the recording of this entire session. We'll probably send in the answers as well. And always feel free to connect with us over LinkedIn, email us, DM Tom. All of us, we're always available to answer any questions you have. And honestly, on closing thoughts and notes, what a fantastic session. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better first webinar to happen. I never imagined so many of us would actually tune in. The huge shout out to the entire Olive team, to the Olive product team for building this product. While it does work as a note taker, it is so much more than that. So please feel free to explore about it on your own at your time. Also, Tom, thanks a ton for taking out the time to, come onto this webinar to honestly teach us more about active listening.
Pleasure being here. This was an awesome way to start off. Excited for more sessions. I just shared my LinkedIn in the chat, so feel free to connect with me, follow up with these questions, and I'm happy to dive into them further. But hopefully this was insightful, and hopefully a lot of you could start practicing a little bit better active listening skills as you go into your calls, your relationships. You'll be able to pick up on things a lot more.
All right. I think we'll call it a day then. See you, Tom.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody. Please stay updated about our events and do follow us on LinkedIn. Bye-bye.